A truly great American hero. Someone who's not afraid to tell it like it is. Someone who is at one point part of the military establishment. In fact, so high up that he was Admiral of the Sixth Fleet in the Pacific. I'm talking about Admiral James Lyons. Just a little introduction here because I made a little reference to it earlier, and he's going to talk about this and other matters. But we have been losing more men in Afghanistan per capita, given the number of men there, killed and maimed, than in any other American war in modern history. And the reason for that, in large part, are our rules of engagement. Our troops cannot fire upon the enemy against the Muslim jihadist enemy unless they're fired upon first. They have to wait for the enemy to lay their arms down to see if they're going to fight back. And the ultimate fear that you might take collateral casualties from the Muslim population. So who takes the casualties? We take the casualties. And that policy is in large part been made worse by one Barack Hussein Obama, who hopefully is listening to us right now and doing his work, which of course, rather than being on a golf course in Tehran. So I want to introduce you to Admiral Lyons. He really is a great hero, and the fact that he would come forward and other military heroes will come forward to speak for our troops and for our nation is more than commendable.
Thanks, Larry. It's great to be with you all today. And I want to thank you all for coming, because with your presence, you are sending a message. You know there are problems. And of course, one of the problems is the Obama doctrine. Now, you may not know what it is, but let me tell you. It's to undercut our friends and allies, leaving them confused and feeling betrayed. We become an unreliable ally, which has only emboldened our enemies. It's based on the false promise that American power has been part of the problem. Therefore, anything that undercuts American power is seen as objectionably progressive by this administration. This is what's behind the unilateral disarmament of our military forces, the draconian budget cuts under sequestration was an Obama initiative. We are headed in the Navy for the smallest Navy we've had since prior to World War I. Not World War II, World War I. The other services are suffering similar reductions. Our national security is being jeopardized. We have wonderful people in our military. Compounding the problem is the social engineering that has been forced on our military personnel, which has weakened our traditions, customs, morale, and most importantly, the will to win. This cannot continue. Our personnel did not join the military to be sacrificed. But that's what's happening in Afghanistan. under the restricted rules of engagement, in the false hope that we will win the hearts and minds of a tribal society. This is nonsense. The restricted rules of engagement are well known by the Taliban. They use them against us. And as Larry has said, you can't fire on a Taliban unless he's firing at you first. Or if I see a Taliban walking away from an IED that he just implanted, I can't shoot him. This is crazy. You've all heard green on blue. The murders of our personnel by our, quote, Afghan military allies. It's been explained by some of our leadership that it's our fault because we are not sensitive enough to the Afghan 7th century traditions and customs. So if you see an Afghan sodomizing a 5-year-old boy, our troops are told to turn away, don't interfere. The same way with an Afghan beating a woman. Turn away, don't interfere. This is un-American.
Yes, sir.
We are making our military submit to a 7th century Islamic mentality. This has to be reversed. And it is the restricted rules of engagement that cause the greatest loss of American lives in Afghanistan in a single day. 30 Americans lost their lives unnecessarily, including 22 of our elite warriors. SEAL Team 6. The mission was Resolution 17. How could you put that many special warfare warriors in a single helicopter that's used to transport men and materiel and not to be used inserted in a hot fire zone?
Treason! 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 Treason!
They were waiting for that group to come in. We had an AC-130 gunship overhead for 3 hours. They weren't allowed to fire because of the rules of engagement. This was crazy. This was a pure dereliction of duty. And it's this same dereliction of duty that we saw displayed in Benghazi. That caused the loss of 4 Americans, including our United States ambassador. We had both strategic and tactical warning that an attack was going to occur. We had forces that could have been brought to bear, but weren't. We need to know who gave the stand down order and held that person accountable. The callous statement, "What difference does it make?" cannot go unchallenged.
That's right.
We know what has to be done. President Nixon understood that, and his lie was only about a bungled burglary, not the death of 4 Americans.
That's right.
the families of those lost, and the American people deserve answers. Nothing less is acceptable. The special committee that Congressman Wolf has been trying to get activated needs to be activated now. No more stalling by the Speaker of the House. And one other thing before I normally don't like to give up the microphone once I've got it.
Keep it.
But
We love you.
let me say a couple of words about Iran. Here we've got the leading state sponsor of terrorism. They've been at war at the United States for over 34 years. They're the ones took our embassy, blew up our embassy in Beirut. We have proof positive. We know they caused thousands of deaths in Iraq.
That's right.
And you should never forget that they were found guilty in the New York District Court by Judge George Daniels for providing material and training support to the 9/11 hijackers. So here we have this administration so eager to sit down and sign a document, negotiate, which makes no sense. What would an agreement with Iran mean? The Islamic principle of taqiyya would apply, lying to advance the cause of Islam.
That's right.
This makes no sense. So, what are we going to do about it?
Rise up.
You folks are part of the solution.
That's right.
We need to press on, and with Larry's help and his people, we can make a difference, we can make changes, and that's what we must do. Nothing less is acceptable. I thank you for all being here, and it's great to see you. Thanks.